Welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today we're going to tear this thing down, figure out what failed, fix it, put it back together. Come along for the ride. We appreciate you being here. Click like, subscribe, leave us a comment below. Gotta unlock it first. Right up. You can hear it's got a tick when it's cold. Once it's warm, that noise actually subsides and mostly goes away, but it's still definitely there. So we're pretty sure we have a cracked piston below the top rings, below the compression rings, as our compression, or relative compression, is spot on. So we're going to pull it in, pop the body off the frame, jack up the engine, pull the oil pan, figure out which piston has failed and what damage is done in the bottom end. Pop the respective head, pull the piston out and see what we have. I think we're almost ready to pop the body off. Yeah, fuel lines I don't need to disconnect. Brake lines. Using my positive battery cables. I think it's ready. Alright. Well, let's lift this thing up off the chassis and see what I forgot to disconnect. I think I got everything. I know I still need to undo my heater hoses, but those are easier once I pick this up a little bit. I think I have everything else, but we'll just do it slow and keep an eye out as we go. I think that's about the right height this thing needs to be at. About another 3 inches up. Looks good. bands with the body off. Ambulance packages suck. I am pulling the oil pump, the oil pan separator plate so that I can identify which cylinder is damaged. Gotcha. And then I will pull the cylinder head I need to, because we didn't see any damage from the top side when we had the heads off, which is why everybody was so surprised that, I mean, I've never seen a running engine spitting out oil control rings. Whenever I'm pulling rings out of an oil pan, it has windows in the block.
Right.
So, yeah, it wasn't something we expected to see, and it's the first time we've ever seen it, but it's certainly something to take note of. Pull that guy out of there. You can see the oil pump cover's got a score through it.
Uh-huh.
So that'll be a cause of concern. That's where one of those pieces of metal went through. Ironically, in perfect line. It didn't go through sideways or it would be wedged in there. It went through completely straight, which is, I mean, the odds of that are hard to believe. But, so the piece of metal went through here into the pressure side, and then it got caught up in the regulator, which ended up hanging the regulator open, which did its job. It shut off low oil pressure, which shut off high oil pressure, which shut the engine off, because without high oil pressure, the fuel system shuts down and protects the bottom end. So we fished out the piece and fired right back up. Oil pressure was great. I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I'm expecting the oil pan separator plate to have damage to it as well, because if a chunk of that piston came down and the piston came around and hit it, it'll knock that apart too.
Are you expecting the piston itself to be
I'm expecting
damaged?
to pull half of a piston out that's still connected to a rod. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I'm expecting to see when I pull it out. Because relative compression's good.
Right. That's why I was.
But I am seeing excessive oil in the boost tubes. So, and with the oil control ring not controlling oil, that's absolutely something you would expect. So yeah, it's weird. It's a strangely unique one that, you know.
All because of a faulty injector.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, it's possible we dropped a bolt down and fucked it up too. I mean, if we pull it apart and I find a fucking piston with a hole in it and there's damage on the top end, then it's something we did. But that's why I drove down to bring it back here, because I'm like, I got to do my due diligence to make sure it's not something we made a mistake in. I mean, the valves are so small in these, it's hard to think of a bolt going through the valve and into the engine, but anything's possible.
Right.
So. And I've seen these drop valves too, but if this had dropped a valve, we'd have a dead cylinder. We wouldn't have, you know, all eight within 5% of relative compression. So, and pop this oil pump out. Yeah, it's uniquely strange. The front cover doesn't look horrible. Probably put a new pump gear rotors in it and a new pump cover on it. Let's pull this oil pan. See what else is messed up. Damage or parts there, so that's good. Ooh, I think this engine's been apart before. I think somebody wasn't completely honest with the buyer. pen markings on the bottom of the pistons. I don't see any big chunks in there, or big chunks out of the piston, but number 5, it looks like I can see the center ring of the oil control ring. So I'm going to pull number 5 initially. So I got to pull this cylinder head.
There's no scarring though.
No, the cylinder wall looks great. So I'm going to pull number 5 out. I'm pretty sure that's the only thing I have a problem with. I have a little bit of material in the sump, so I'll see if I can clean that out. But
Just piston slap it. If it needs one.
yeah, I'm just going to stick a piston in it, put it back together. These things don't blow the bottom end up unless you're doing something massively wrong with tuning, or you don't change the oil.
Yeah.
But if you run it out of oil, it'll shut the engine down because the HEUI injection system doesn't have enough
Makes it
oil.
feel safe.
Well, the HEUI injection system is secondary to the oil system, so if you run it low on oil, you're not going to kill the motor. You're just going to make it turn off. It's a beautiful system. It keeps it. It protects the beast from the nut behind the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Picked the wrong week. Quit sniffing glue. That's going to land up right on my feet. Those are heavy. I would say number 5 is our culprit. Looks like it's got some extra carbon in there. Oh, that's depressing. Needs a motor. Yeah. That thing is messed up. I'm gonna guess that the cylinder was in the upwards position when we put it together. I was just not to see any of that. Let's knock it out of there. How the heck did it have good compression? Obviously it didn't. So that goes to show you that the cranking compression test doesn't really tell you much. But it did tell me that I had a 5% drop on this cylinder. And that certainly looks to be where our problem is.
So your oil control ring parts came out right through there.
Oil control ring, second compression ring, first compression ring.
And they came out through that little hole.
Yeah. And it hit a valve too, but I don't understand why it would have hit a valve. And like I said, this thing stopped on us before we started working on this, or we would have probably been able to catch that. But it was a good running truck, and we test drove it and it quit. We couldn't do any further tests, so it burned us. The piston was probably up in that bore when we looked at it. I don't remember the smile being there last time. Although it is beating the rods, it is beating the rod bearings out of it, so. That's a real kick in the pants.
There's still a couple little pieces of oil control ring there.
Oil control ring. Son of a biscuit. Well, I guess we need to find a motor, because this one's tough. That cylinder wall needs bored at the very least, and I wouldn't trust a bore in it anyway, so. That's the first one I've actually seen damage in, other than people putting improper tunes on them. I mean, if it's hydraulic, that's one thing. But I was expecting to see the piston skirts broken, but what's weird is it's just the rings are destroyed in it. What the heck would cause an oil control ring to come apart? And then the question is, are other oil control rings starting to go? You know, if the cylinder wall was good and you slap one piston in it,
Yeah.
what
Put it all
happens?
together again, and the next
Put
one
it all
comes out.
together and then another piston starts coming apart.
At
Because,
this point, you have to throw it all down.
well, I mean, the truck's got 120,000 miles on it and you don't know what tunes were put on it. If somebody was running this thing around with a 200 horse tune all its life, well, this motor's done. That's not what I wanted to see, but it is what it is, so I'll whip this motor out and we will make a new one. So there you go, 6 liter. Oh well. Let's get cleaned up. I don't think it hitting the valve on assembly would have caused ring damage. I think it would have caused... I'll be interested to see what Mike says when he looks at the cylinder head to tell us about the valve. It's weird that it's only hitting one. Yeah, the other exhaust valve probably doesn't contact because it's probably in the halo. No, it's only hitting the one valve. The other valve would be right there. So it's probably hitting the valve because the piston's rocking because it's so beat up. Because if we had hit it during assembly, it would have had 2 exhaust valve marks. I would say somebody ran the piss out of this truck and then they knew there was a problem with it and they listed her up for sale. Well, we're not going to be that guy. Let's go find us a motor and fix it right. Because that's what you do. Well, we show you the good and the bad. Thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe. Leave us a comment below. Yeah, not what you want to see, but it is what it is. We'll get some parts hunted down and coming, and we'll put this thing back together. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching.